Have you ever imagined that one man could transform a backward country on the fringes of Europe into a mighty empire in less than 3 decades? This is Peter the Great, the Russian Tsar, who personally sailed the waters of the Black and Baltic Seas, led his armies to victory over the most powerful armies in Europe, and ushered his country into an era of modernization and renaissance. From building St. Petersburg on muddy ground, to founding the first Academy of Sciences and Arts, and reforming the government, army and navy, his life was a blend of war, ambition and innovation. Welcome to this new video in our series on military leaders. In this video, we will delve into the mind and iron will of Peter the Great to learn about the man who changed the destiny of Russia and the world and made his country a force to be reckoned with on the international stage. Peter the Great, Tsar of Russia, was born on June 9th, 1672 in Moscow, the firstborn son of Natalia Narishkina and Alexis I, Tsar of Russia. Despite his father having several children from his first marriage and older half-brothers, their early lives presented Peter with a realistic opportunity to become heir to the throne. Raised in a formal environment steeped in courtly rituals, Peter received an extensive education from Russian tutors and foreign soldiers, most notably Nikita Zotov, Paul Menesius and Patrick Gordon. His mother, the minister Artemon Matveev, played a significant role in directing his interest in progressive European ideas, particularly in the fields of science, politics and social reform. Russia at that time was a geographically vast, but economically and politically underdeveloped nation, facing geographical limitations on trade due to a lack of warm water ports, while Sweden and other European neighbours were far more advanced. This reality formed the backdrop against which Peter would become a reformist and ambitious leader striving to modernize his country. His father Alexis died in 1676, and his half-brother Fyodor III ascended the throne. However, Fyodor III's untimely death left Peter and his half-brother Ivan as heirs to the throne. They ruled together as co-tsars under the regency of their sister Sophia and the powerful princes of the court. During his early youth, Peter began exploring the European world and interacting with Moscow's foreign community, absorbing Western culture. He first married Evodia Lopukhina and had 3 children, 2 of whom died. He then led a complex personal life, including mistresses and illegitimate children, reflecting his contradictory character, torn between ambition and liberalism on the one hand, and despotism and a thirst for power on the other. Peter was distinguished by his imposing physique, his towering height, his distinctive moustache, and his charismatic leadership. He was fond of Western European culture, but did not shy away from hardship. He waged long military campaigns and founded a group of fools and jesters who mocked traditional customs and religion, driven by his love of humour, boisterous celebrations, and a desire to challenge social norms. As time passed, his clashes with Sophia and the courtiers intensified, prompting him to assert his authority and exile his rivals. This marked the beginning of his path to sole rule over Russia, a path forged from ambition, power, and a reformist approach that would forever alter the face of the Russian Empire. Peter the Great's rise to absolute power in Russia was confirmed after the death of his co-ruler, Tsar Ivan V, in 1696, although Peter had already been managing state affairs for years due to Ivan's prolonged illness. From the spring of 1696, Peter became the sole Tsar, an autocrat, powerful, and determined to modernize Russia and transform it into a great power. In the mid-1690s, Peter the Great led a military campaign south against the Turks in the Azov region, achieving strategic victories on the Don River. This established Russia as a major power in the Black Sea and paved the way for a long period of conflict with the Ottoman Empire that would extend until World War I. In 1697, he launched a grand embassy to Western Europe, visiting the Baltic states, Prussia, Germany, the Netherlands, Britain and Austria. His mission was to gain first-hand knowledge of science, technology, shipbuilding and economic and political systems, with the aim of bringing this practical experience back to Russia. He returned home in the autumn of 1698 and immediately began implementing what he had learned, introducing newspapers, establishing the Senate, reforming the Orthodox Church, expanding the bureaucracy and increasing administrative efficiency, along with some unusual measures, such as adopting the Julian calendar. In the military sphere, Peter began preparing Russia to dominate the Baltic Sea, leading to the Great Northern War against Sweden and its allies. He distinguished himself at the Battle of Poltava in 1709, shifting the balance of power in the region and securing vital access to the Baltic for Russia. Based on this, he began building St. Petersburg in 1703, a new city on the coast. Its location was both symbolic and practical, combining military strength with European urban development. He personally oversaw every detail, from fortresses to palaces and public squares. Peter also founded the Moscow School of Mathematics and Navigation in 1701 to train naval officers and engineers, and he personally led the development of the navy, eventually attaining the rank of full admiral in 1721. He also worked to attract the brightest European minds, establishing the St. Petersburg Academy of Sciences and Arts to serve as an educational and scientific center for the modernization of Russia and a bridge between Russia and Western Europe in modern science and technology. In short, the period between 1696 and 1724 showed Peter the Great as an ambitious leader and tireless reformer, combining military power, urban ambition and scientific modernization, founding modern Russia on the foundations of international power and merit. For over a decade, Peter the Great received valuable advice from the German mathematician and philosopher Gottfried Leibniz on establishing an Academy of Sciences in the new Russian capital, St. Petersburg. Although Leibniz died in 1716, before the project's completion, Peter continued to push forward with scientific and administrative reforms, such as the founding of the Collegium in 1717, a centralized administrative system that oversaw foreign affairs, finance, the military and industry, with a central building in the city that still stands today. Peter did not neglect education, establishing schools for the children of the aristocracy and the middle class, believing that education was the key to Russia's progress. He also reduced the power of the Orthodox Church to promote scientific thought, becoming one of the most prominent examples of an enlightened autocrat in Europe. Peter further enhanced Russia's standing in Europe through his second embassy, 1716-1717, visiting France and its scientific and cultural institutions and adopting European innovations for Russia, such as land reclamation and the construction of New Holland Island in St. Petersburg. On the military front, he continued to consolidate Russia's power after the Great Northern War, believing in the necessity of securing seaports. Through the Treaty of Neustadt in 1721, Russia secured territories on the eastern shore of the Gulf of Finland, as well as Estonia and Livonia, establishing itself as a major European power. With this victory, Peter assumed the title of Emperor of Russia, extending his authority into Eastern Europe and Asia, and solidifying Russia's position as a modern empire. Domestically, Peter established the Order of the Ranks in 1722, based on merit rather than lineage, and defined 14 ranks for all governmental, military and religious spheres, thus founding a new meritocratic society that would remain influential in Russia until the 1917 revolution. His ambitions did not stop at Europe. In 1722-1723 he led a military campaign against the Safavid Persian Empire, advancing south through the Caucasus and across the Caspian Sea, capturing cities in present-day Azerbaijan. This demonstrated Russian military superiority against the Asian powers and laid the foundations for Russia's expansion southward and eastward. Following his military and political successes in Europe and Asia, Peter the Great continued to expand Russia's influence southward through the Treaty of St. Petersburg in 1723, in which Persia ceded large parts of the Caucasus, paving the way for a series of Russian campaigns in Central Asia over the next century. Domestically, the Tsar's monumental building projects began to be completed, most notably Peterhof Palace, designed by the Swiss-Italian architect Domenico Trezzini in the patriarchal Baroque style. This palace became a symbol of grandeur and power in St. Petersburg and was later known as the Russian Versailles. Despite his achievements, Peter the Great's health began to decline after his return from his Persian campaign due to kidney problems and symptoms of uremia. He died on February 8, 1725, at the age of 52, leaving the question of succession unresolved. His wife, Catherine I, ascended the throne, ushering in an extraordinary period of female rule that lasted for over 70 years. Among the most prominent empresses was Catherine the Great, who expanded Russian influence southward and across the Black Sea, drawing inspiration from Peter the Great's model of combining enlightened reform with autocracy. Peter brought about profound changes in Russia. He laid the foundations of the modern state, introduced political, educational, economic and military reforms, and expanded Russia into a major European power. However, his rule was inherently autocratic, employing a secret police force and concentrating power in the hands of the Tsar and his inner circle, thus cementing the model of Russian despotism for centuries. His legacy has endured through the ages. From Russian influence in Eastern Europe to female rule in the 18th century, to contemporary Russian leaders, including Vladimir Putin, valuing him as a role model. Despite the contradictions between his progressive reforms and his authoritarianism, Peter the Great remains arguably Russia's greatest Tsar, shaping the country's history and leaving an indelible mark more than 3 centuries later. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.